Tracking flood concerns both in the short term and long term forecast. We'll play it out step by step here. First, the short term flood advisory in effect for parts of the valley until 7:30 on our Tuesday evening. That's because of some saturated ground, some heavy rainfall, and some minor flooding on roadways, as well as low drainage areas. We're starting to see those ponding concerns once again as the amount of rain that's come through over the past 2 days is giving some saturation to the ground. And then, of course, the snowfall that piles up for this year. All of this continuing to be a concern as we head into our Tuesday evening. Now, you can see the band of rain starting to taper off here through much of the valley, but the snow for the Sierra, well, it just doesn't want to let go. 80, 50, both with big travel concerns there, and also south of Highway 50, the snow continuing to fall all the way down in pockets to about 2,000 feet. It's been really, really slushy in places like Placerville, just up the hill from Auburn, and also through parts of the foothills and parts of the Mother Lode here. Unfortunately, that's going to continue to be the case. So you can see the amount of road closures that we had. We had Highway 50 finally opening up, but through the series of this storm, Highway 50, 80, 88, 89, 108, 4, 120, and 5, all experiencing closures from time to time just because of near whiteout visibility for the Sierra. In terms of our snow totals that have come in for Donner, 25 inches, Sierra City, 23. Keep in mind, these are only 24-hour totals. Blairsden with a foot of snow. Applegate and Somerset, both in the foothills, about 1 to 4 inches of accumulation. What does this look like by the time we have gotten to this point in the season? You can see up at Truckee, as we see these pictures coming in from our weather force, how high that snow is piling up here, and a little bit different perspective from the front door out to what should be a nice path. The snow piling up, making it very, very dangerous out there as well. A lot of folks are having difficulty getting out of their garages, and the snow piling up above the rooftops here. So the 24-hour totals, anywhere from about 1 to 3 feet of snow. But when you look at the cumulative effect, now we're talking the potential for some dangerous conditions, especially if we get a wetter storm, a warmer storm in here into the month of March. And it looks like we are going to be trending likely wetter, potentially warmer. Now, this is very far off in the distance, but something that we're keeping an eye on is the possibility of a storm brewing in the Pacific. Now, here's the pipeline right here. Just as we get beyond that 8 to 14-day period, we could be looking at a wetter storm bullnosing into California. Could be just slightly south of central California. But if that warmer storm hits the Sierra with all this snowpack, that's what's going to lead us into the potential for some flooding. And you can see the numbers here. We're anywhere from about 150 to 225% of normal at this point in the season. And when we look at that April 1st date, where we normally see our snowfall shut down and the melting begin, we're at about 125 to almost 200% of normal throughout the entire Sierra. That puts the statewide average at over 150% of our April 1st average. That means a lot of snow to melt. Currently, plenty of space in our reservoirs. That's the good news in this. It's likely, though, if we start to see several of those warmer storms setting up in the Pacific, they're going to have to start letting some of this water out to make room for all that snow melt coming our way. But again, that's highly dependent on how warm that storm system would be starting that storm cycle that would move on through the middle of March. As far as our New Melones, Don Pedro, San Luis, those central valley reservoirs, anywhere from about 45 to 75% of capacity. Things are looking pretty good. Again, plenty of capacity for some of that snow melt initially. It's just what's the duration if a warm storm were to start and how many more would follow behind it. Currently, we're still under that very cold air mass. Temperatures have been hovering about 15 to almost 20 degrees below average. So this has been a really helpful storm system to get some of that snowpack up. It's just a matter of how it starts to melt once we get into both the warmer part of the year and also more storm systems in the pipeline in the Pacific. Our blizzard warning continues until 4 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, and also that avalanche warning where we've seen periods of shutdowns for many of our Sierra roads due to avalanche control. Dangerous conditions continue in the Sierra. Down the hill, We're looking at our winter storm warning in effect until 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Travel nearly impossible over towards the coast. Winter weather advisory will continue until 10 o'clock on this Tuesday with a wintry mix all the way down to about 2,000 feet. Now, there's not a lot of moisture left over from this storm system. We'll see most things come to an end by early tomorrow morning, and then we're back to dry conditions. On the flip side of that, though, we get into some really cold air that will be dangerously cold, in fact, for parts of the valley and foothills. As far as our rainfall, about 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch coming in from midnight alone. Almost a 1/2 inch to over an inch of rain for the foothills, but it has been, like I said, a slushy mix. On the positive side of things, this has helped to bring up those monthly averages. We were running pretty close to almost 2 inches behind for our monthly total. Now we're just about 9/10 of an inch behind where we would normally be. And of course, today we're going to close it out for the month. That puts our departure from normal at over 3 inches ahead of where we would normally be for our seasonal total. It seems like we would have almost more than that, but we're just about 3 inches ahead of normal. And that's pretty true for most of the state as well. After we get through February, March tends to be a drier month. But I'll tell you, the way that things are shaping up in the long range forecast, it looks like we are going to have a wetter than average start, at least, to March. This week alone, we're going to see storms returning by Saturday and Sunday. Of course, Wednesday and Thursday, the big focus are going to be on the dangerously cold temperatures for overnight lows with freeze warnings in effect. That coming after we see that cold low pressure system move off to the east, but the storm track just really doesn't favor much of that warmth building in from the south. Instead, we'll continue to see most of our influx of cold weather come in from the north, and then we'll track that developing low pressure system that's sitting off the coast. So likely cooler in the forecast and wetter. That will be at least through March 14th. But again, as we look a little bit deeper into the forecast, it looks like we could start to see that storm cycle turn over to a much warmer weather pattern. Here you see this atmospheric river just brewing from forecast models in the Pacific. And if that holds together and then makes its way inland, depending on how warm it is and the duration of how long it sticks around, that's where we get into some more of those longer range flood concerns. So in the short term, we're going to clear things out here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, some time to dry out. And then we get into our next storm coming in for the weekend. More storms coming our way next week.